Right, so we're going to be talking about deadlifting today, and there is no better person to talk to about deadlifting than our man Nick here, who's our strength and conditioning coach. He is also Guinness World Record holder for...
Heaviest deadlift in 24 hours, Guinness World Record, yeah.
There you go, so no better person to be asking questions. And for me as a chiropractor, I tend to see a lot of people come through the door with injuries that often are related to their exercises, and deadlifting is a big one. People I find are very culty about deadlifting. They want to push their boundaries a lot more, and then I tend to find a lot of people coming through saying, I was just deadlifting and something went in my back. So for me, it's a question about the risk and reward. So for me, I'm risk, and this man here is reward. First of all, let me ask a little bit about deadlifting. Why do you think deadlifting is such a favoured exercise?
I think there's a few reasons for it. One is essentially there's a whole sport built around it in powerlifting, or it's built around three main lifts, but one is the deadlift, and that's traditionally the one that you can load up the most and will be the heaviest for most people, unless you're a specialist squatter or a bench presser. So it's probably the one that, you know, most people can lift the heaviest weight on, which is exciting. They want to lift 100, 150, 200 kilos, whatever it is. The other one is, although it looks very, very simple in that you are just lifting a weight off the floor. And if you are trained, that is what it is. It's just lifting weight off the floor. If you're a beginner, there's a few more moving parts to it than that. And it potentially gets, those things probably get overlooked a little bit, that technique-wise, it can go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so I tend to find I actually advise the majority of people that I see to avoid deadlifting, mainly because I can't guarantee whether they've had the right kind of support and teaching and training to prepare themselves for it. I mean, we were saying there about beginners, I'm sure there's a lot of technique there that needs to be taught before they actually get on and do it, right?
Yeah, and I think it can be boiled down to a few main points where you can then take those main points and apply them to a whole load of compound exercises, and that's mostly a good starting position in all your exercises, a good brace, so being able to stabilise the core and the back, to hold it in one position while you're moving the rest of your body. And then there'll be a few different cues that will work for different people as well.
Obviously, going with deadlifts itself, what would you say is the real benefit of doing deadlifts?
So if we're talking about the conventional deadlift barbell from the floor, it's one of the best posterior chain strengtheners. If you didn't have very much time, that would certainly be one of the exercises that you would try and include, because it ticks quite a lot of boxes strength-wise. You're going to get some upper back strength, definitely some core development in there, as well as obviously your hamstrings, lower back, glutes. So it does tick a lot of boxes in terms of...
Why would you say then that posterior chain is really important? What is posterior chain, and why is it important to our modern day person?
Yeah, sure. So your posterior chain is essentially all the muscles that are on the back side of the body, particularly hamstrings, glutes, lower back, and those muscles in that chain, if you will. Why are they important? They're important for longevity in terms of your posture. They're important for being able to carry out day-to-day tasks, bending over, carrying, lifting, these sorts of things.
And I mean, for me, what I tend to see in clinic is obviously a lot of people nowadays are at their desks, so they're kind of in this flexed position. Their extensors are super weak, and we're seeing loads of people with lumbar instabilities, just absolutely weak lumbar that are leaving them prone to all sorts of different injuries. So posterior chain, from our perspective, is super important. But is deadlifts the go-to to really get that posterior chain work the best?
Now, I'm obviously a big advocate of deadlifts. However, I think I said to you before we started filming, I can't remember the last time I prescribed a deadlift for someone in a rehab setting. For me, in that setting, and even in sport performance, to be honest, the risk versus reward, if you're in season as an athlete, and if you're rehabbing a lower back or a hip or even a knee injury, it wouldn't be my go-to. My go-to would probably be a Romanian deadlift, again, a variation of a deadlift. it's still with a barbell, so you can load it up, but you're not, the toughest or most technical part of a deadlift is breaking it off the floor usually. People can often get into a good position when the bar is stationary on the floor. Where things go wrong is when it comes off the floor and it's just below the knee, back's round, the bar drifts away from the body, things like this, and then it puts them in a bad position. That's what usually goes wrong. You can take that all away by doing a Romanian deadlift where the bar never actually touches the floor. There are many other hamstring strengthening exercises that you can use, but if we're talking specifically deadlifts, those would be the two barbell ones that I would probably use almost interchangeably, but I'd favour the RDL for most people who can't deadlift for whatever reason, or I don't think it's worth deadlifting.
So with a lot of these kind of compound movement exercises, I get the impression, we need to prepare people for them as well. So I think with deadlifts, once again, people tend to throw themselves into deadlifts. Is it worth people almost getting themselves prepared to do a deadlift? Is there other exercises that they can start with to actually lead into deadlifting?
Yeah, you can definitely do progressions towards deadlifting. So I've mentioned the RDL, and you can look at it as if someone comes to you and says, I want to deadlift 100 kilos, I've never deadlifted before, what do I do? Maybe you would start, okay, let's have a look at your hinge pattern in general. So you look at the RDL, just the bar in the hands, something like that. There are certain structures that you want to make sure are, as you say, there's no lower back instability or something like that before you start loading up an RDL or a deadlift. But yeah, there are definitely progressions towards it, and it might be something as simple as you stand a dumbbell up on its end, or you use a kettlebell and you just are sort of squatting over the top of that and lifting that off the floor. That's essentially a kettlebell deadlift. That might be a very beginner position, a very beginner place to start, and then try and progress towards a barbell. I'd probably go that kettlebell deadlift, then Romanian deadlift with a dumbbell, then Romanian deadlift with a barbell, then barbell deadlift from the floor. If you have to, if the jump from Romanian deadlift to a conventional deadlift from the floor is too great, you can then raise the bar up from the floor. So I'm not a massive fan of rack pulls, but you could do a deadlift from blocks, for example. So if you had the plate on either side of the bar, you then put the plates on top of box either side, and so the bar might sit just below the knee or something like that to start with, and perform your sort of block deadlifts from there.
So would you say, are there people that you would quite simply advise not to do deadlifts? If there are, who would you say they are?
My philosophy around this is there's no inherently bad exercise. You can't say deadlifts are bad. You can't say squats are bad. It doesn't wash. It doesn't work. So what you can say is deadlifts for you at the moment, probably not the right thing to do. If you've got lower back instability or sore lower backs, or you've torn your rotator cuff, probably don't want to be holding a barbell against your body like that. There are certain times deadlifts wouldn't work in season, in sport, in people who are healthy. You would say risk versus reward for this. If we're going heavy, it's probably not worth it. We can do something else where we're going to get, we're still going to get high motor unit recruitment. We're still going to get the stimulus that we want, slightly less risk. You might swap in a trap bar, for example. They're in a bit more of an upright position, squatted position. Who are the people who shouldn't deadlift? People who already have lower back, hip, shoulder, neck injuries or history of, potentially. That's not to say they can't work towards deadlifting if they follow a structured rehab program.
Is there a point with a lot of people that you would say, actually, you're managing the exercise really well, this is your weights, maybe limit it to this and stick to that? Or are you still, would you say the majority of people are still okay to just push their boundaries a little bit?
I mean, it depends on the goal. So if they're going to be a powerlifter, they just want to get progressively stronger. They'll never be happy with, I hit a PB, but this guy lifted this, so I need to lift more, right? Or I've hit a PB, but my lifetime ambition is to lift X. In terms of the general sort of gym goer, again, if their goal is to get stronger, I would encourage them to keep putting a little bit more weight on the bar, try and do an extra rep, as long as what I would refer to is a standardised technique or standardised form. If you can maintain that standardised form and lift an extra rep, lift a little bit more weight, then you know for sure that you're getting stronger or you're getting more efficient at the movement or something like that. But if you have to sacrifice technique regularly to lift more weight, that's not quite right. There's something wrong there. You need to take it back a step, focus on your technique, get it solid, and then start moving forward. And that might be little weak links, like we talked about the posterior chain and core already. It might be specific muscle groups, like your hamstrings might be weak if you're really struggling with the lockout. It might be if your back rounds or your shoulders come forward too much when you're trying to lift off the floor. It might be upper back, you need to do more rows, for example, or you need more core work in your program.
So I mean that kind of, once again, is that form versus strength, isn't it? And we see it quite a lot, and certainly with what we see in clinic with patients with lumbar instabilities, our focus really is always on the form. And then once we get the form right, we can start talking about strength and we can start building up a little bit more. Obviously you're getting stronger even though you're concentrating on form with a lot of these exercises, but often it feels like we really have to concentrate on the form because it's all about the technique. And that's the only way you're really going to get stronger properly, right? Like you're only going to get stronger properly if you concentrate on the form, because if you start forgetting that, then actually you can go the opposite way, make yourself weaker and leave yourself open for injury.
Exactly, yeah. Just on that standardised form thing, if you're coming from the beginning, you've got to learn the technique, you've got to standardise that technique so it stays the same every single time. When you approach the bar, you've got you fall into like a little mini routine with your setup, so you don't even have to think. That setup is done. You always go left foot first, right foot. Take your grip on your left, take your grip on your right. Whether you hook grip, mixed grip, using straps, whatever. Left hand grabs first, right hand next. Okay, I'm going to use the bar to pull myself into position. Now I brace. Now I move and I lift. It has to be exactly the same every single time. And you might have parts of a strength training session where you just practice your setup. People might think it's a bit funny, you just practice the setup and don't actually lift. So what you could do is a manageable weight that you could do for 5, 6, 7, 8 reps, something like that, but you're only going to do it for one. But you're going to do it for 10 ones in a row. So you've got plenty in the tank. It's not heavy. You just go in, setting up, trying to get the setup exactly the same every single time, 1 rep, and then a minute later you're going to go back, do it again. So you're practicing the setup 10 times in a row, and then practice that setup every set. So if you're doing a heavy set 5 or you're doing a light set of 8 to 10, doesn't matter. And then it takes one thing out of what you're focusing on. Then when you are training for strength, you don't even have to think about that. You step up to the bar, you know your setup is exactly the same. You know that's not a problem. You don't even have to think. And it's the same for the other lifts like squat, bench press. It's all the same.
So you mentioned something there which is really important that once again I've seen plenty of, and you're saying about having plenty in the tank to do these. I mean, these are often complex compound movement patterns, right? These are complex movements, complex exercises, and I know from some gym ethos, we won't say who, but a lot of them, they might go for a 5k run before they go in and do deadlifts. And once again they're going in knackered and then they're doing a complex pattern. And so once again, one of the reasons I end up saying to not deadlift is often because I don't know the situation or the environment that they're in when they're doing it. Are they kind of going into it fresh? Have they warmed up really nicely? Are they going to be able to concentrate on form? Are they likely to be knackered going into doing that complex pattern? So it's easier for me to just turn around and say, just don't do them. Just don't do them, because for me, the risk outweighs the benefit. But I think they very much have a place. Certainly you said the posterior chain is so important, and it's where the majority of people are often weak in this day and age. And so we really need to concentrate on getting that stronger. For me, that's where, it's great having you on board, because then we can say this person needs to work on this. They're keen on doing deadlifts, or they've injured themselves doing deadlifts, but they really want to do them. We get them better, we send them to you and say, let's get the technique right, let's see where you're going wrong, and then go on from there. For me, I think anyone that wants to do these complex patterns should have that direction from someone that knows what they're talking about. I think it's so important, because otherwise you don't know if you're doing it badly, you don't know if you're doing it wrong, you don't know if you're doing yourself an injury or making yourself weaker instead of stronger.
And I'd add to that in that it's not just the technical side of things, it's also the prescription of sets, reps, and when should I be doing this many. For example, over a month, am I just going in and doing 5 sets of 5 every time and trying to lift progressively heavier? Or am I doing that for a month, then I'm going to back off a little bit, and then actually I'm going to go to 3 sets of 3. Your sets and reps, your volume and intensity should fluctuate over time. You shouldn't just be pursuing a 1 rep max every time you go into the gym, or a 3 rep max, or a 5 rep max every time you go into the gym. And it's not just that you might be doing it badly, it might be that you're doing an inappropriate amount of volume for your capacity at the moment, or an inappropriate intensity for your capacity at the moment. So it's not just, am I doing the exercise correctly? It's how much am I doing, how hard am I doing it, and is that right?
Would you say there's a place for deadlifting from a younger age? I mean, once again, I'm seeing a lot of teenagers that are hypermobile, they have a bunch of instability, and their posterior chain is all over the place.
Yeah, and I think it's important that youth athletes learn correct techniques for a wide variety of exercises, so that they have more movement options when they get a little bit older and they can get into the gym and actually train for hypertrophy, strength, etc. Whatever's going to help them in their sport, or whatever's going to lead them to a healthy lifestyle. However, I would say there's a little caveat to that, in that it needs to be appropriate for the youth category. And there's nothing wrong with strength training as a youth athlete, it just needs to be guided by someone who knows what they're doing. It might be more sort of play-based strength training, and it might be more exploratory in the sense of they need to be able to coordinate and control their own body before you add an implement like a barbell.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's fine to teach them the lifts, but that's not the only thing. They need to be robust enough and kind of have enough movement variety and movement options. So that's more what it's about, I think, with youth training in general. If we're talking specifically deadlift, again, probably wouldn't prescribe a conventional deadlift for a youth athlete unless, for whatever reason, it was a junior powerlifter. That's not because I'm against deadlifts. I like deadlifts. It's just because I think an RDL probably has more bang for the buck, and you avoid that messy part off the floor, which is where, as I say, where it's probably going to go wrong. Teaching youth athletes hinge patterns isn't that easy anyway, but I think the RDL is a better option. And as I say, there's loads of different options, especially in the youth categories, because I mean, you can pretty much do anything and they'll get stronger, right? So you could do a hamstring bridge, glute bridge, hip thrust, and these things you don't need that much load to start with.
What you said about, loving obviously deadlifts. I mean, you'd have to love deadlifts if you're going to do it for 24 hours. Tell me how that experience was.
To be honest, it probably got a bit harder sooner than I thought it was going to. So the total lift loaded was 580,220 kilos, which was, I think it was 866 sets of 10 at 67 kilos, which was a lot. I think my target going into it, so the record before that was 527,000 kilos, something like that. My target was 550,000. So by the time it was I started on Friday at 10 a.m. By the time we got to 6 a.m. on Saturday, I'd broken the world record, and then carried on to finish the 24 hours. So it was a big day. I was very, very sore. And this is totally anecdotal, but when people say deadlifts are one of the best full body strengtheners, my sort of most recent experience of feeling that is that 24-hour although the weight was very light, it was like 20% of my 1RM or something, and I was only doing sets of 10. But the next day and the sort of week after, I was sore everywhere. The muscles that you wouldn't normally think oh, I'm going to do deadlifts and I'm probably going to get sore forearms, or I'm probably going to get sore neck, or I'm probably going to get sore feet. Everything was sore. But I mean, that's probably just, that's a total anomaly where the volume is just so high that it's different.
Have you got any other battles and challenges on the horizon that you've started pointing and thinking about?
Well, I'm looking to hopefully finish Ironman Wales on the 22nd of September. So that's exciting. Can't wait for that to be done, to be honest. It's been a bit of a miserable summer because me and my partner are both doing it, but excited to have done it. It's been nice, to be honest, to do something that you're not very good at for a little while, because the aerobic side of things has always been my kind of weakness, not potentially the stuff that I don't really enjoy that much. So it's been nice to do something that I'm not very good at, and I actually quite like cycling, so that's been quite nice.
And that's the majority of it, right? That's the bit you're on it the most.
That's the biggest time piece. Don't like swimming though, so.
Very good. I think so. We can probably wrap it up, can't we? I think ultimately what we're saying is, deadlifts are key for strengthening your posterior chain, which we all know that is super important for us to build up. There is definitely a risk for certain people that we need to keep an eye on and make sure that actually, if they are planning to do it, we work out, is it for them or isn't it? And if it is, that they get the proper direction. Yep. And actually we would say that anyone that is increasing that volume, increasing that weight, should all have really a check to make sure that their technique is bang on, because once again, there is a massive risk if it is form is wrong and they're building up that weight. If you really, really want to do it, which there's a lot of people that really, really want to do it, they come see you. They come get it checked out, check their form out, understand if there's other things that need to be built up before they actually start doing that complex pattern. Yeah,
and follow a program as well. Once you've got the technique down, as I say, standardized form, follow a program. That's how you get stronger over time. The people who are the strongest are the people that have managed to lift the longest without getting hurt, and they all follow programs. People don't just randomly pull world records or randomly get PBs or randomly progress in the gym by turning up and thinking, you know what, I'll just max out on the deadlift and see if it's gone up by 20 kilos. It doesn't really happen. So just follow a program, and then you'll get the results that you want. The easiest thing to do is probably come down to the shed, get a free 15-minute consultation with myself. We can go through your technique. We can give you a few pointers to go away with, and potentially even get you on a program once you've got that, as we say, standardized form, and your results will just go like this.